It's wet, cold, and Australia as I leave Sydney, again, on a journey of exploration with Air New Zealand to discover if it's as bad as you might think. Now that seems odd. After all, big wide leather seats, fine cooked Kiwi cuisine, getting out of the rain of Australia, but Air New Zealand business class is notorious by its age and odd design. I'd also had an appalling experience before with rude people on Air New Zealand flights, and that's just the crew, so I'd refused to set foot on them for several years. This time though, I was through check-in in a flash. Security took a couple of minutes, and I was told to relax in the empty terminal. Yet it was with considerable trepidation I'd set off on this trip. However, it was a lounge at Sydney that was to be my first stop of the day. A business class ticket gives free access to the lounge, and seeing how early it was, that stop was crucial. The Sydney lounge for Air New Zealand is on the upper level of the balcony above the main terminal. A few years ago, Air New Zealand updated this lounge from the old Koru Club, which was green and dated, to the brand new style Air New Zealand lounge with feature cocktail bar. However, the colour palette is distinctly monochrome, with white seats, white walls, white benches contrasting with the deep, luxurious brown carpet and occasional purple seats. Not many people around at midday on a Friday for the only wide body of the day to the land of the long white cloud. Now, I do like this lounge. There's a lot of natural light and the lounge offers fascinating tarmac views. Indeed, the staff as well couldn't do enough for me. I was flying through to London Heathrow, but I'd only checked in for the short hop to New Zealand. The two flights were on different bookings, so it took quite a lot of time to check everything was in order, and that I even had a visa to do the trip. Now, I had a lot of time to admire the light installation while they were sorting out the paperwork, which symbolises the long white cloud. That's the light, not the paperwork, before investigating that most vital element of the day, breakfast. The Kiwis went all healthy on me today with green vitamin drinks, yoghurt, and lots of bread. Goodness knows what was in the juice, but from the way it tastes, I really hope it was healthy for me. The food theatre was busy serving up an unusual breakfast this morning. They'd gone Mexican with avocado wraps with wild boar sausages, along with cheese and a little sour cream. The lounge also includes a full-time barista. I had a coffee, and then the bar staff were keen to engage me in the first cocktail of the day. The recommended starter for early in the morning is an espresso martini. They mix it up very well indeed. However, if you want to do it yourself, dotted around the lounge are a dozen or so bottles of classic spirits. There's a fridge full of Steinlager and Max, or if you don't fancy the Kiwi local stuff, you can get a healthy bottle of Corona. Plus the juice that keeps the South Island going, it's Sauvignon Blanc. As a nod to Aussie beers, Little Creature and Kosciuszko are on draft. This week there was even a promotion for the wine of Hawke's Bay, a region on the east coast of New Zealand's North Island. Although normally I won't drink anything stronger than champers for breakfast, but for that there were some fine Kiwi sparklers. Just as boarding was called, a staff member trotted over to me with a rack of boarding cards all the way to Heathrow. For once, the runes aligned, and Air New Zealand's IT decided to talk to United. The terminal's fairly empty, but nowhere near as deserted as this time last year when I had to get special government permission to leave the country. Then priority boarding was for once correctly enforced, and I could walk straight on board onto the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. It was time to board, and with a sense of foreboding, I wondered what would happen if I made it obvious I'd got a camera. This time the crew couldn't be more welcoming, and even asked if they could make the seat neater for my videos. Clearly, they'd got the memo from Auckland that photography is permitted. And there is what got me into trouble before, taking a photo of this very seat. Now I can report on it, I can confirm it's still woeful. Now it's better than economy, anything would be, but the Boeing 787 business class seat still remains one of the worst in the business, in business class. The seat's an iteration of a seat that was first licensed from Virgin Atlantic, and at the time it was a revolutionary design. But Air New Zealand started operating its first 787 back in 2014, and even at the time it seemed odd it would fit a 20-year-old design. Had a wander through the cabin, and Air New Zealand Premium Economy has a 232 layout, 41-inch pitch, 19-inch width. It's ultra-conventional after the total failure of its locally designed radical new Premium Economy space seat, which looked great in photos, but trust me, was incredibly uncomfortable. Meanwhile, Air New Zealand Economy on the Boeing 787 Dreamliner has a 333 layout with a 31-inch pitch and a 17-inch width. It does exactly what it says on the tin. There are 263 economy class seats, there's an 11-inch video monitor, which is marginally better than some other airlines, and there's USB power. Now back up the pointy end, and the seat is far larger, but the main problem is the seat is long, thin and narrow, and with this design of seat it was dubbed Coffin Class on Cathay Pacific, who rapidly ditched it. Mind you, it's way better than the narrow-bodied aircraft which mainly operate this route. No wonder many people deliberately choose this one. It's good to see pre-flight drinks are back after being sorely absent for the past 2 years, and they include sparkling wine. There are menus at each seat. It's only a photocopied sheet of A4, but at least it's a menu, and for our delectation later, there are Turkish loaves, ancient grain rolls, Hawkesbury extra virgin olive oil, along with mains of balsamic braised lamb with kiwi asparagus, pan-fried snapper with lemon butter, or roasted chicken with smoked tomatoes. A rarity on these flights is also an amenity kit. Remember, the flight is just a few hours long and few other airlines would bother. But it's a full amenity kit with mouthwash, toothbrush, moisturiser, socks, eye shades, and that most useful of items that frequent flyers know to guard with their lives. It contains a pen, far more useful than telepsychic helmets or even a towel when travelling. It saves all that tedious mucking around when the immigration forms arrive and you can't find a pen.
Out of the airport, so probably 15 to 20 minute taxi I would envisage. However, once we're airborne, it's an early right turn straight through to Auckland. 2 hours and 40 minutes is the flight time.
Simple buttons are provided to raise or lower the seat, and another button to pop out the huge tray table. As for the seat length, well, technically it's infinite as there's nothing in front of you, but the Ottoman footrest has a little bump at the end, a little raised wall, so technically it's only about 6 feet long.
Kia ora everyone, thank you for joining us today. In preparation for departure, please secure your bags and let's talk securely. Place your larger bag and your overhead locker in a small bag under the seat in front of you. To assist the flight attendants, please close the lockers, clear the aisle and take your allocated seat. A reminder that you are required to wear a face mask by the New Zealand government and by Air New Zealand throughout your journey with us today.
Take that because you, oh no, you're alright, sorry.
The crew caught me on the hop, popping up like a keen Zebedee to see if I was happy before takeoff.
Just have a few of the cargo doors open still at the stage downstairs, loading the last of the freight. Hopefully that should be finished fairly soon. Should be able to push the aircraft back. We've got quite a long taxi today. The runway we've been allocated is right across the other side of the airport, so probably 15 to 20 minute taxi I would envisage. However, once we're airborne, it's an early right turn straight through to Auckland. 2 hours and 40 minutes is the flight time today, with a little bit of weather on our initial climb. Possibly a few bumps in the middle and then pretty reasonable through to Auckland. Quite a nice day there at the moment, just an easterly, pretty fine, and about 20 degrees on our arrival. Matt, you will be flying you through to Auckland. We'll update you with your arrival time and a little bit later in the flight. In the meantime, JJ and his great team will be looking after you, so thank you.
On the Air New Zealand Boeing 787 in business class, seats are in a 1-1-1 configuration, but with so little privacy, it's embarrassing as you're in effect staring over the aisle at other people for hours on end. Thankfully on the left you look over a blank wall, unlike on the right where the seats all look at each other. That's unlike on the Boeing 777 where it's 1-2-1 and everybody gets to stare at the rest of the cabin on takeoff. Talking of which, just listen to those engines. And there we go, waving goodbye to Bondi behind us. At least I wish I could see it, but a major flaw in the seat, amongst many, is that if you're in the window seat, the only way you can see what's outside the window is to crane your neck back around 60 degrees, which is pretty much impossible unless you're an owl. At least now it's time to have a look at the in-flight entertainment on the Air New Zealand Boeing 787, which of course I couldn't do on the ground or even on takeoff. Now, Air New Zealand make much of the fact that in the cheap seats you can watch the in-flight entertainment from the moment you sit down. Well, not in business class you can't. Not only is the screen inset into the wall, but the screen is angled in such a way that you can't look at it when sitting down. Hence the reason why on Air New Zealand, in that hour before boarding and takeoff, there's absolutely nothing to look at other than the rest of the cabin. Goodness, that menu was very closely studied. Anyway, when we hit the cruise, even the butterfly wallpaper in the bathroom seems fascinating. And now, at least, it's time to open up those headphones, and Air New Zealand have got a pretty nice pair, comfortable with decent sound quality. Despite the turbulence, and there was a lot, I can check out the film selection. Pretty decent, not exceptional, but I've really only got a couple of hours to enjoy it anyway. A quick hop over the Tasman, so it's dinner time already, and I pop out that huge table. In a flash, the crew were ready with a gin and tonic. See what I mean about the crew being very, very attentive today? It's a real novelty. Indeed, no sooner have the crew served me my Bombay Sapphire with Schweppes tonic than the starter trolley comes down the aisle with starters. Seeing as I'm finishing my drink, I ask if I can wait a few minutes, and not only are they too happy to oblige, but suggest I have a beer if I want to have my dinner just a little bit later. Steinlager is the Air New Zealand beer of choice. It's loaded, and I enjoy it. I go for the Manuka smoked free-range chicken. This comes with frika and cranberry tabbouleh on the side and 2 dollops of walnut aloni, with a vec, of course. The chicken is fantastic, soft, tender with delicate flavour that really emphasises how it's smoked with 100% Manuka wood from the west coast of New Zealand. And spot there's full metal cutlery on Air New Zealand again. Now we're already halfway over the Tasman before the main course arrives. I was a little bit behind everybody else. I've gone for the balsamic braised lamb with cannellini beans, carrot thyme and orange and black olive dressing, all washed down with a glass of claret. This again with grate, lots of flavour in the lamb, which had clearly spent a happy life skipping over the green fields of New Zealand before being served up to me with accoutrements. Non-traditional garlic bread on the side, and the crew came back to ask if I'd like some Hawke's Bay extra virgin village press olive oil to dip into the bread. Air New Zealand takes its business class wine very seriously indeed. There were 2 sparkling wines, 3 whites and 3 reds on offer during the flight, and several crew members were identified as wine specialists. I like that title. Anyway, I went for the Marlborough Shiraz. For dessert, there was New Zealand cheese served with quince paste and cracker selection and Dow's port. I asked the crew if I could have both desserts, and they beetled back to the galley before coming back with a caramel panna cotta and sesame crumble with strawberries. Now this was a one letdown. A panna cotta should be Italian dessert of sweetened cream thickened by gelatine. It was, but that light, delicate, creamy taste I was looking for was notable by its absence. By now it was 2 hours since takeoff, and the crew asked if I needed anything else for my filming. A complete change from the previous crew, who threatened me with prosecution if I so much as took a photograph of their aircraft seat. By the way, I didn't warn Air New Zealand that I'd be on board or filming, so this was a crew totally spontaneously helping me out.
Making our approach straight in, heading towards the northeast at Auckland, where we should be touching down at 4:45 and arriving on the gate about 5 minutes early at 10 minutes to 5. Time change from Sydney, so the time in New Zealand at the moment is just coming up to 17 minutes past 4. Weather in Auckland this afternoon, a moderate northeasterly breeze here at the moment, temperature on the ground of 19 degrees Celsius.
Now, just a little bit of background for you. A few years before, I tried to take this very same trip. A crew member with a serious attitude problem marched me to the back of the aircraft and gave me a dressing down in front of the crew and the other passengers about just what I thought I was doing, taking a photograph of the seat. To speak to any passenger that way was unforgivable, and I did it in business class as well, just because I took one photo of the seat. That crew member then told me that I was going to be offloaded, demanded to know how many bags I had, and suggested if I wanted to take this further, I could talk to the captain. I didn't realise this was a serious threat, so of course I said, yes, let's talk to the captain. 10 minutes later she came back, and without any other words just said I could return to my seat and it was fine. No word of apology followed, and it was later left to another crew member to apologise for the cabin service director's attitude, who was firmly told by the captain that taking a photograph of an airline seat was not only permitted, it was encouraged by Air New Zealand. After that kind of attitude, I've boycotted Air New Zealand over the past few years, and they've formed no part of my many airline reviews over the past 2 decades. For me, it was as if Air New Zealand no longer existed. However, I decided in a spirit of forgiveness that I also couldn't ignore them any longer. After all, I wanted to see if they'd improved. But trust me, the seat really is that bad, so no wonder they want to keep it confidential. And there we are, on the ground and in one piece. Now, was Air New Zealand what I expected? Well, yes, but they also surpassed themselves. It was a very good flight.
Until the seatbelt sign has been turned off. Also, be careful when opening the overhead lockers, as items can fall out. It's now safe for transmitting functions on your electronic devices to be turned on. If you are connecting to another international flight, follow the signs for international transfers. After passing security, check the party screens for details of your next flight. For those of you connecting to a domestic flight, you must collect your bag and clear customs. There is a free green inter-terminal bus between terminals which departs every 15 minutes. Due to airport construction, there is no pedestrian footpath at this time.
Now, I knew that the Kiwi airline had fitted a notoriously bad seat on its latest 787 aircraft. Thankfully, Air New Zealand are fitting a new seat in the years to come, and these include the Business Premier Lux suites right at the front of the plane. Trust me, I'm looking forward to trying those out. These seats are still going to face inward into the aisle, but they give much more space and much more privacy. As for this flight, well, the food was generally really rather excellent. I love the new style Air New Zealand lounges too. The crew are a standout. Very good indeed. I've really got to praise them, and a surprise to me might be that I might actually return and try Air New Zealand again.